Hey friends, welcome to Rugged Outdoors Guide. My name is Pete and this is my channel. Today I just want to touch base really quickly on kind of introductory level 101, preparing for an emergency, first baby steps. All right, now before I even start into that, you have to understand every emergency is different. So when you're talking about like, is the emergency that, Costco is closed and you can't get toilet paper for a week? Or is there, cruise missiles coming in from Russia and, they're equipped with a nuclear warhead, right? Very different emergencies, right? So not everything is relevant for every emergency. Today, I'm just going to be touching base on what to do. Again, the first three steps, there's 100 things you can do or more, but entry level, which means first three things that I would suggest you do, it's what I've done to prepare in a food crisis. So what I mean by food crisis is if you think that you won't be able to access food for a while, maybe you can't get to the grocery store, maybe the grocery store shelves are bare, maybe there's been a hurricane and there's just nothing in the stores, they're not open, they're destroyed, or whatever. So again, this is my opinion. You can go to there's 1,000 different prepper sites. But I try to do things very economically, and I can't just go, a lot of the prepping websites just tell you to go to Amazon right away and you get this generator and that power source and, these pre-made meals, you can buy pre-made meals for thousands of dollars. And surprisingly, they don't last that long. Like we're talking, several people for several months, like $1,000 or more. Like, it's just really expensive. So I tend to be a little bit more on the frugal side, and maybe that will help you if you're into the same types of things that I am. So today I'm here in my garage near part of my food stores behind me, and I will just kind of give you my take on what you should do first three things. If you're interested in videos like this, please do give me a like. If you would like to share the video, it'll get out there more if you give me a like, and if you want to hear more stuff like this yourself, well, then you want to give me a subscribe, all right? The first thing you want to do is make sure you have enough water. Now, a lot of emergencies are based on sort of this magic 3-day thing. A lot of emergencies last longer than that, obviously. However, 3 days seems to be kind of this sort of initial target, right? So there's even this new warning out for the residents of New Jersey I've heard recently about nuclear emergencies, whether it's, something from Russia coming over, with this whole nuclear scare with Putin and all that, or, they've got several nuclear generators there in New Jersey. Whatever the case is, they're telling people to be ready for 3 days. Don't go outside for 3 days if there is an emergency of some sort regarding a nuclear accident or missile or whatever it is. So you want to have access to water. Now, you might think that's fairly easy for a lot of us. If you live out in the country, you got well, you have a cistern, but do you have access to that inside your house, right? There's the key. You don't want to be going out to the pond in the back 40 to get some water and then filter it, right? So you can, if you sense an emergency coming, it's not very difficult to just store up, a couple of pails of water. All you're talking about is drinking water, essentially, for the people in your house. So it might not be very much. One of the things that I like to suggest is pretty simple, is if you have a sump pump, you probably have enough water in the well right now to sustain everybody in your family for 3 daes. Now you want to obviously filter that water. So you can just kind of go to your camping gear and you can get, here's a water filter from MSR. It's just one of these hand operated pump ones. And works wonderfully for me. So, that's kind of bottom line. You can just do that. You can also get, on Amazon, what I would like to get, I don't even have one yet, is a gravity-fed water filter. And it's got about the same capacity as this one, but you don't have to do anything. You just kind of load up a bag and hang it up, and then it just kind of, does its own thing on its own. So there are different options. Obviously, I'm not going to go into all the details of how you filter the water, but I just need to let you know that you want to have access to water inside your home for 3 days for everybody in your family for drinking and cooking. All right. number one. Number two, we're talking about an emergency survival situation. So we're not talking about getting wonderful things that we enjoy, like desserts, for example, all right? No, we're sticking to basic survival food for a short time, okay? So what do I do? Well, my family and I have been doing this for years, and what we do, I mean, it's a simple trip to Costco, and we get beans, rice, and oats, right? Now, those three things are really inexpensive, relatively speaking. They're a way better deal than getting pre-made meals, and all you really need to prepare them is some water and some heat. Now, your heat can come from your camping propane stoves. Remember, we're talking for 3 days, so you're not going to need a lot. I mean, you can store up some canisters for, and they'll be good for many years. So you can go ahead and do that anytime, and it's relatively inexpensive. And there you've got your cooking source. I do have that, but I actually have, we've got all kinds of videos on how I like to use my twig stoves. And so we have a couple of those too. And just about anybody, even if you live in the suburbs, you can find enough twigs to keep a twig stove going. It can boil a couple of cups of water, a typical one, in about 5 minutes or less. And it's just not difficult to keep it going. So there you go. You've got, the other thing I didn't mention is dried pasta as well. We do have that, like macaroni, for example. But, dried pasta, easy to prepare with boiling water, same as oats. And it's a little bit more complicated with beans and rice, but only a little bit. Again, hot water that's boiling can do wonders. If finances and budget are no problem, well, then yeah, go ahead and get prepared meals. They're even easier and less worry, less of a hassle. However, they are significantly more expensive. So just as a little FYI, we just go to Costco, pick up a bunch of, this is a small package, but it came like 30 of these or something crazy in a bigger package. So it's just penne, but whatever dried pasta is fine. And I also have a 10 kilogram bag of chickpeas. And I happen to keep a lot of this stuff in the freezer because I still have power. I'm not in the middle of emergency. And that just helps keep things a little bit longer than storing it in your garage. Also in your garage, believe it or not, you can get all kinds of little, in addition to rodents and things that can access your garage and not inside your freezer, hopefully, you can also get little flying creatures and insects and mites and things that can damage your food stores. And it's much less likely to happen in a freezer. So one of the things that we have done, in addition, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but we have in our garage, you do a quick look behind me, there's a freezer right there, somewhere behind my finger. And then there is a fridge behind me you can see with some of my kids' stuff on it. That's also got a freezer. And then right in front of me here, I'll show you, I'm leaning over, a third freezer. So we have lots of freezers because as long as we have power, it can preserve food for a lot longer. And we're talking normal food like that you buy at Costco rather than prepared emergency meals, which can cost, as I said, a lot more. All right, guys, and just before we leave our storage pantry area, I just want to touch base on one more thing here. This is a tiny moisture absorbent package. You've seen these in every pill container you've ever purchased. All right, it just absorbs moisture. It just helps to preserve your food that much longer. Really helpful in dried goods, right? And that's another thing I didn't even really get into. If you look right up in that corner up there, there's one of our food dehydrators. And we use these in some of the larger packages of dehydrated fruits and vegetables that we store. Really inexpensive. In fact, just before I made this video, I went to Amazon and purchased a package of 100. You can get them as little as I think 10 cents each, or they can be as much as $1 each if they're stronger, bigger packages. So depending on their absorbency abilities, right? So I would strongly suggest getting some of those for your dry good storage. Another thing we've done, and this is still in the food category, so this is still point number 2. Number 1 is water. The other one is actual food to sustain you. My wife and I have been together, we've been canning a lot more recently. Now, I know a lot of you guys already do that, and that's great. For those of you who don't, it might be something to consider. A lot of canned food is often food that is considered non-essential, like jams and jellies and, even something like pickles. You might think, well, it's just sort of almost considered a luxury food. It's nice and sort of sour and tasty, and it's not necessary for survival. I would say that pickles are kind of one of those things that's on the edge. I would go for it as a sustenance food, because you can just have this with some beans or something. I mean, the more variety you have, the better, but it is a sustenance type of food, I think. So we've done that. We also can all kinds of other stuff, but where do we get all the stuff we can? We don't usually buy it. All right. Now you can, if you buy it, you can, save it for years. I know that officially you're not supposed to have stuff that like canned stuff isn't supposed to last for years. They talk about it in months. It's not true. If you do it properly, it can last for years. I have cans of pickles and various sort of spread, like preserves that you put on your bread, from my mother, who hasn't been canning for over 20 years. I have cans with jam in it that are 20 years old, and it's like she just made it. There's no mold, there's no decay of any kind. So when people say, oh yeah, you do your canning and it can last up to 4 months or something like that, like, it's a bunch of baloney. Seriously, guys, you can can stuff if it's done properly, depending, I guess, on what it is. It can. I'm not saying it will necessarily. I'm saying it can last for many years. All right, so where do we get the ingredients for canning? This is salsa. I will show you that. We've got a garden, and I think anybody can start something like this, even if it's a tiny bit smaller than ours, but ours is pretty small, and I think it's attainable for you. Okay, so the third thing I would suggest is to get something that resembles a bit of a garden. All right, now behind me, you can see one of our gardens. It's a 3-foot high metal ring that I got from an old grain hopper kind of storage silo, whatever you call them. And, it's not easy for everybody to get, but you can get raised garden beds, or even, a really good DIY hack would be plastic barrels that you just kind of cut in half. Right there, you can see not a plastic barrel, it's a wooden barrel, but again, it's just cut in half, and it's filled with, really like nice compost, soil, and it can grow anything. All right, so what I have in this one, I've just got some kale growing here. It's autumn, and it'll grow pretty well all winter long. You can see I have a frame on mine, and that's just to throw over whether it's a frost blanket, or I've got in the background way over there, you can see I've got plastic that will serve as a bit of a greenhouse during the winter. Okay, so I really don't have a lot. I mean, this thing here is about 9 feet across, and I have 2 of them. You can see another one behind me right there. And then right here behind me is our small garden. It's about 10 feet across. It was just a bunch of dirt that I threw on the ground, literally, and just started to grow whatever I want in it. I'll show you what this garden behind me looks like before anything grows on it. And there it is right there. See it over my shoulder? That is about 9 feet, or about between 8 and 9 feet in diameter across, and all it is mushroom compost, and it's ready to have stuff planted in it. So anything that you can come up with, guys, would be helpful. Again, small pots are fine, but start to grow some of the basic vegetables, like, for example, I think sustenance vegetables are tomatoes. If you have the depth like these ones do have, you can grow potatoes, which again, sustenance food. I'm not a really big fan of telling people just to grow their herbs. All right, a lot of people just do that in their living room or, sunroom. They'll throw herbs into a little pot. It's nice. They're nice to have, but they're not sustenance food. Herbs are not going to keep you alive, right? Potatoes will. All right, guys, so this is not a video on gardening and all the details of how to go about that, but I would just suggest as an entry level, these 3 things. have enough water for 3 days at least for everybody in your household, maybe inside your home. All right, so that could be an issue depending on the type of emergency that you're dealing with, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But you got to have a way to filter it if it's not already clean and potable, ready to drink. Second thing is you got to have some food. I would suggest something like dried food that you can have over a longer term, and whether it's canned wet food or dry food like rice, beans, pasta. Those are all good options for a longer term storage and easy to prepare, especially the pasta. You just throw it into hot water, and a way to make your water hot, right? So it could be a propane stove, could be a twig stove. Again, this is short term. This is something you could probably do the next day without having to spend a lot of money or order a lot of stuff from Amazon. And the third thing is to have some sort of garden scenario, even if it's just starting with one huge pot, or one half barrel filled with potting soil. You can start growing things that are helpful for your beneficial for even, and you can always have 3 days worth of 3 days worth of tomatoes, not that difficult, or something like kale, which is a really high value food, even though it's leafy and green and it won't fill your gut. Adding a couple of leaves of kale to anything will increase its nutritional content, and it will go very far to allowing you to survive, right? So that's why we grow kale. It's one of our crops that we won't do without. All right, guys, so that's just a little bit of information, not a lot of detail, but just kind of entry level 101, top 3 things to get you started that you can do today even. To get you started to prepare for some type of emergency. Every type of emergency is going to be a little different. This one is based on your limited availability or access to food. Right? We'll do more videos on power that you'll have to have, to make sure, for example, that your sump pump will work and you don't get flooded. Right? There's lots of other angles to preparing for emergencies. This is just for the food thing. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. And until next time, remember, I am Pete. This is Rugged Outdoors Guide. Check us out often, and God bless you guys. See you next time.